Hello. So today I wanted to talk about some of my favorite books that I've read this year. So far I'm at about 30. My goal is 50 for the year. So wanted to talk about some of the ones that stood out to me, either for better or for worse. So the first book is Slewfoot by Brom. And I don't usually like that era of historical fiction, but I was pretty pleasantly surprised with this one. I thought all of the relationships between the characters were really well thought out, especially between the two main characters, Abatha and Samson. Overall, it was a very intensely satisfying story about friendship and magic and female rage. So if you're into that, I would definitely recommend this book. The next one is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. What else can I even say about that one that hasn't already been said? I laughed, I cried. I'm gonna think about this book forever. Without spoilers, definitely some of the most beautifully written relationships between characters that I've ever read. And honestly, this book had my anxiety levels kind of skyrocketing through the roof with the little sparks of hope that it gives you, with this like weird background feeling of dread. Like something is gonna go wrong and then something does go wrong, but it's always paired with like enough hope that you're still kind of like on the edge of your seat, like rooting for the characters, and you know, the hype is real for this one. So the next one is He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan, which is the second book in the Radiant Emperor series. And I actually honestly kind of struggled with the first one, She Who Became the Sun. I felt like in certain parts the pacing was really slow and there were certain points of view that I just didn't really care about. But this book actually fixed a lot of that for me, which I think is pretty rare for a sequel. Not that I didn't struggle at all with this one, but seeing the relationships of the first book come together and apart and together again, it was so satisfying and honestly, like at times, devastating. This book definitely had me shedding tears multiple times, for sure. Number 3 is This Is How You Lose the Time War, which, again, I don't know how much more there is to be said about this book that other people haven't already said. It's a story that feels like poetry when you're reading it. At times, I honestly had no idea what was happening, but I kind of loved it. I was just along for the ride with these characters, and being jolted around through space and time was honestly like, it was a wild ride, and I think that this is one of those books that is just going to get better on every reread. So number 4 is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, and I honestly struggle with how to accurately describe this book without giving away spoilers, but it's about a lot more than just a woman deciding to become vegetarian. You could replace being vegetarian or choosing not to eat meat with pretty much any other lifestyle choice, and the metaphor would still hold. And that's because it's a story about like women's autonomy and the expectations that society puts on them, the harm that we as people cause other people, as well as the world just in general, and cultural pressures and barriers. Honestly, more than just the messaging, I found that I loved the execution of this book, which again, usually it's the other way around. Like I don't really care for the execution, even if I love the concept. Like sometimes it just kind of falls flat because of that. But this one, the execution was so brilliantly done. The storytelling, like every aspect of it was so well thought out. And there are so many details to notice that I kind of found myself thinking more and more and going back and kind of trying to decipher all of the analogies and the messages in this book that I initially didn't catch. So the last book on this section is Pachinko by Jin Lee. And this is far from my usual type of book that I like to read. I'm not usually as fond of the multi-generational type stories, since I think that just a lot of the time covering so much ground and so much time span and so many different characters can often leave out a lot and can kind of rip you away from certain characters that maybe you get attached to. But I think Pachinko did this concept better than pretty much any other book that I've read that does this. I laughed with the characters, I cried with them, I followed them on journeys big and small, and I, watched them grow up and change for better or for worse in a lot of cases. And while I do have a couple of gripes with this book where I don't think it will be for everyone, I think for me they are overshadowed by how much I was pulled in, despite usually getting pretty easily bored with this type of book. So, some honorable mentions. First up is The Traitor by Cormorant. And this book was excellent. I'm excited to read the rest of the series, but just this book specifically, I think a good chunk of it was just way too slow, and I found myself kind of bored and like forcing myself to get through it. But the rest of it, when I was engaged, I was like really engaged. I was locked in. Number 2 for honorable mentions is Mary by Nat Cassidy. This one is fun, it's gross, it's creepy, it's a little disturbing and a little sad, but it was a wild ride for sure. I really enjoyed it, but I also think maybe the last part of it, there's kind of like a tone shift and it's a little bit disjointed with the rest of the book. I think some people will love that, some people won't, but overall I really liked this book. Okay, so next on the list is actually 2 books. I read them one after the other. And they're the first and second book in a series, and it's The Unbroken and The Faithless, both by C.L. Clarke. And okay, I have a very complicated relationship with these books because I loved the main character, Turain, I think that's how you say it. I loved her so much, like easily one of the best characters of all time for me, honestly. But my problem is that every other character just treated her so badly through it, like even the characters that are supposed to care for her, and that like genuinely made the book kind of hard for me to get through at a lot of times because I just felt so defensive towards this character. I was like, girl, you deserve so much better. Why are you like tolerating all of these people who are terrible to you? Honestly, like the world building of this series is good. Like the magic system is like amazing. It's so interesting. But for me, Turain really carries the series. She's such a brilliantly written character who is so flawed, but is always like trying her best and like thinking about the people that she cares for. And honestly, her flaws are what makes her such a brilliant character. So I'm really looking forward to the 3rd book in that series. Next book is Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austen. This one was, it was cute, it was sad, it was quirky. I thought that the narrator had a really unique voice, and it was so easy to empathize with her, despite all of her flaws. And overall, I just thought this was a really endearing story. Again, not one that I would usually tend to pick up or be super interested in right off the bat, but I'm glad I did. So the last book on this portion of the honorable mentions is The Will of the Many by James Islington, sorry. And my main issues with this book were the main character being a little bit of a Gary Stu, and the female characters were a little bit bland. I don't know that I loved how they were written, and just like the weird kind of moral centrism. The book was kind of unwilling to take, I think, an actual stance on a lot of the messaging that it was also trying to convey. But I do think that there's a lot of potential for this to be remedied in The Strength of the Few, the next book. And I think that there is so much potential. I absolutely love the world building of this book. So I am definitely excited to see where it goes next. Okay, so the last portion of this video is some books that I didn't really love. So a little bit controversial maybe, but starting off with the Hades Calculus by Maria Ying, which is kind of a reimagined cyberpunk, steampunk, Hades and Persephone, Greek mythology story that unfortunately fell pretty flat for me. The characters felt a little bit cold and unfeeling and bland just in general. I wasn't really sold on any of the relationships or romances. There just wasn't really a lot of chemistry for me. And to be honest, I like weird books, but this one, there were parts that I think were just a little too weird for me. Don't ask me to explain further, but yeah. The concept was kind of cool, but at the same time, it also kind of felt like the author just slapped Greek god names on the characters and did whatever with them. So yeah, I finished it, but I probably won't be continuing that series. The next one is Light from Uncommon Stars by Ryka Aoki. Ryka? Sorry. And again, a really cool concept. Like, in theory, this book is like absolutely everything that I would supposedly love. But in execution, it just didn't really do it for me. It felt like it was trying too hard to be quirky, and the main romance just didn't, I wasn't really sold on it. Like, I didn't see a lot of chemistry. The characters were just okay, but again, I felt like it was kind of a case of just trying too hard. Next is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune, which is the sequel to The House on the Cerulean Sea. And I feel pretty similar to this book as I did Light from Uncommon Stars. I liked the first book in this duology, The House on the Cerulean Sea, and it did kind of have a case of the trying too hard to be quirky isms, but at the same time, it was cute enough to overlook. The sequel, however, honestly, felt pretty gratuitous and a little bit fan servicey, like, let me think of a cute thing or trope or something that I can preach and make the characters do it. Honestly, I kind of think that this book, or even these two books, would have been read better if they were like specifically written for like a children's or young adult audience, because I felt like the tone was kind of younger. Yeah, I don't think it really knew what age it was trying to be. Okay, so the next one is very controversial, but that's Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Please don't hate me. I appreciate this book. I know it's been very well received, and for a good reason. I totally understand that it is an important story, an important narrative, and voice and theme, but I can also kind of tell, and this is a plus for some people, it's a minus for some people. For me, it just didn't really work. I can tell that the author usually pretty much just writes poetry. That just didn't really work for me. I wasn't a fan of the revolving points of view. I think some of them just weren't interesting to me, and I had to force myself to get through them. The slow writing style, the like kind of monologuing, just isn't my thing. I did really, really enjoy the conversations and the dialogue between Cyrus and Orchida. I think that was probably the highlight of the book for me. I found their relationship really, fun and insightful and thoughtful and interesting. But the ending of the book, no spoilers, but it just didn't really make sense to me, or for me, it didn't make sense within the context of the rest of the book. It didn't really even feel satisfying at all. I was like, what is happening? And sometimes I like the very flowery prose and poetry and not really knowing what's happening, like in This Is How You Lose the Time War. For me, it didn't work. I can see why people liked it, it just wasn't for me. And the last book on this list is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. I think that's how you say it. This honestly was just kind of a flop for me. I didn't really like the main character. There were so many cool paranormal concepts that were just never really expanded upon. I think that there was just so much potential for this book, and it just never really lived up to it. It also didn't help that it was so hyped up to me. Everybody was saying that this book was, it felt like it was gaslighting you and you were going to be mind blown by the end, but it just didn't hit like that for me, unfortunately. But yeah. So those are some of the books that I've loved so far this year and some of the ones that I unfortunately didn't. I'm sure that there are strong opinions on both ends of that. So if you've read any of these, or if you have recommendations for what I should read next, please let me know. And thank you for listening.